Okay, it looks like we are live. Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are, folks. There are people coming in from all over the world. I can see here in the comments already, we've got people on from just about everywhere. And thank you for being here. I am in Yerevan, Armenia. My name is Chuck Holton, and uh, I am coming to you from Armenia, where I've been for the last few weeks. Armenia has its own issues, but we're not here to talk about those today. What we're here to talk about is the breaking news that the president of Iran has gone down in a helicopter crash. His name is Ibrahim Raisi. President Raisi, they are the Iranians are calling it a hard landing. Uh, you would expect them to call it that. It sounds to me like more like a crash because a hard landing means you are coming in for a landing and you happen to hit the ground a little harder than you intended to. But apparently he went down in a forested area, the kind of area where you would never plan to go down. And since that's the case, I would say it's much more likely that it's an actual crash. And that makes it much more likely possibility that the president of Iran may actually have just died today, along with some other senior leaders in Iran. As a matter of fact, I am looking here at the numbers of people who were in that helicopter, actually quite a few. But let's see, I'm just trying to find them. They said that the region, uh, they are trying to rescue. They're sending rescue helicopters into the region where the Raisi's helicopter went down, but it wasn't able to land due to heavy mist. And that tells us more that they would not have been trying to land in a forested area in a heavy mist. And so that makes it much more likely that it was an actual helicopter crash. Now, many of you might not know that I actually used to fly helicopters when I was in the Army. I was an Army Ranger for 4 years, and then I got tired of uh, sleeping in mud puddles and carrying a rucksack everywhere. And so I got off active duty, went into a National Guard unit, and switched my profession to what they call Aero Scout Observer. Means that I was a um, co-pilot on a uh, observation helicopter, an OH-58 Kiowa. But since it's a two-seater helicopter, the co-pilot has to actually have flight training so that he can land the aircraft if the pilot is incapacitated. Normally, what my job was to navigate, run the radios, things like that. However, because it was a National Guard unit, most of the pilots were Vietnam era guys, and they didn't. They just wanted to talk to each other on the radio. So I actually got a lot of flight time, actually stick time, flying the helicopters. And I was involved in a hard landing at one point. And the difference between a hard landing and a crash is almost sort of subjective in that I guess a hard landing is a landing where the aircraft is not completely destroyed, but it's harder than it's supposed to be. And when you do a hard landing, they basically have to overhaul the whole helicopter in order to make sure that there's no stress fractures, cracks in the frame, anything like that. And we had that happen one time. I'll tell you the story of that in a minute. But this is not about my hard landing. This is about the hard landing of the president of Iran. President Raisi was flying actually very close to the border with Armenia. He was in Azerbaijan province, which is bordering Armenia. If you remember, actually, I have a map here I can show you. If you look at this map, the red dot is where the president's helicopter went down. I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit so you can see it. But if you notice here, Armenia uh, I'm in Yerevan right now, but yesterday I was in the Sunik province, which is the province which borders Iran, right down here along the Iranian border. So I was very close to the site actually straight line distance where this crash took place tonight. Actually, it's now 8:36 at night in Yerevan, and so I was actually hiking in that area over the last several days and just came back from there. Let's see. Okay, just came back from there um, this morning. Actually, we came back, or last night. I mean, would have been Eastern Standard Time. So this map shows you the village of Uzi, and that's very close to the border between Iran and Armenia. Now, Azerbaijan surrounds Armenia at that border. That Armenian border, just for scale, the length of the border that Armenia shares with Iran is only like 36 miles. So 36 miles across. And you'll see to the left of Armenia, Nakhichevan. That is an exclave of Azerbaijan. And then to the right of Armenia, over here, is Azerbaijan proper. That area between there that is owned by Armenia is what they call the Zangezur corridor. And it's a very contested area because Azerbaijan wants it very badly because they want to put a pipeline through there to their exclave of Nakhichevan. And then if you go further over here to the west, you have Turkey. They want to be able to get their oil and gas out through Turkey, and they've been fighting to do that. So the Iranians have been sort of standing up against Azerbaijan. They don't get along very well with Azerbaijan. They actually have a lot of Azerbaijanis who live, ethnic Azeris who live in northern Iran. That's why this is called Azerbaijan province of Iran. So clear as mud. Yeah. Well, anyway, you can see here the green on the map. Let's zoom that in here. You can see here the green around this crash site. That indicates a forested area. I can tell you from having been down there walking, we were hiking in that area just over the last several days, and it is extremely mountainous. It's some of the most extreme topography that I've ever witnessed. I mean, it's really, really bad. I mean, as far as if you were going to crash in a helicopter, not a good place to crash. The peaks down there run up over 11,000 feet. And so it's a very extreme topography, very cold. It's snowy. We got rained on every day we were out there hiking. We got even hailed on at one point. There were snow dusting the mountains still, even though it's almost June up there. It's been a very wet year in that area, and the bad weather has continued today. What we saw every day we were there for about 4 days. We saw in the morning it was clear, and then in the afternoon the clouds started moving in and getting lower and lower and lower to the point where they just socked in everything, and you just couldn't see. There's a aerial tramway out there that runs to a small village called Tatev, and that aerial tramway is the world's largest bidirectional aerial tramway, or longest, that is, and it goes over this 2,000-foot gorge. And when we took that tramway back after we hiked the whole thing, we were so socked in, like you're just inside the cloud. You couldn't see a thing. So if they ran into a cloud bank like that with the helicopter, it is a very, very bad day because, as we used to say in the Army, those clouds have rocks in them, big, big rocks called mountains. And so we don't know if he's dead. You're asking if he's dead or not. Nobody knows if he's still alive, or at least they're not putting that out. But I'm telling you from my experience being a helicopter pilot and having had hard landings and having been to the area, the region where this happened over the last 24 hours, even, that it's likely that he's dead. Now, you're not hearing that in the news yet, And I may be jumping the gun. I'm telling you just uh, from my own experience, what I understand about this is that this could very well be the end of President Raisi. And so we don't know. What we do know, I will tell you now. Okay, let's go through it. The helicopter. This is from the AP. Uh, the helicopter carrying Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi suffered a hard landing on Sunday. That's today here. It's about 8:41 at night. So this is just a few hours ago. This has been reported by Iranian state media without elaborating on it. They did urge the public to pray for Raisi and the others that were on board his helicopter as rescue crews sped through a misty rural forest where his helicopter was believed to be. So, again, you don't try to make a landing in a forest, right? First of all, at least, especially if you have the president of Iran on your helicopter. So you're not going to do that on purpose. So a hard landing is when you land on a place that's landable, but you land a little bit too quickly. If you're landing in a forest, we would call that a crash. And if the aircraft has been destroyed, there's a very good chance that the president has been injured or killed, but we don't know that yet. Okay. The likely crash comes as Iran under Raisi, and he's very close to the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, launched a drone and missile attack just last month and on Israel, and they are continuing to enrich uranium closer than ever to weapons grade levels. Meanwhile, Iran has faced years of mass protests against its Shiite theocracy over an ailing economy and women's rights. We've all seen the protests have been happening across Iran, and lots of violence as the morality police doing very immoral things like beating women so there's been a lot of trouble. It's been very interesting for us as I've been here in Armenia over the last several weeks because there are tons of Iranians that are fleeing their country across that border that I was just at a couple days ago, coming across that border into Armenia. Some of them come just to have a vacation because they can come here, they can drink, they can dance, they can listen to music, all things that they really cannot do in Iran. And when they get here, the church that my son and his wife are involved in has a ministry where they go out and hand them Bibles. They just run into them in the streets of Yerevan and say, "Hey, are you Iranian?" And they go, "Oh, yes." And they say, "Great. You want a Farsi Bible?" That's something that's illegal for them to possess in Iran. And so they're actually very curious and very interested and actually very excited to receive a copy of God's word. And so at the church that my son and his wife go to here in Yerevan, there is actually a thriving ministry to Iranians who are living here, who have fled here because of the oppression of the government, and they are going to church here. They're trying to get visas to go to the United States or somewhere else. We're talking about, I've interviewed some of them. We're talking about single women who have been beaten and persecuted by their government, who have a legitimate asylum claim to leave Iran. Whether or not that legitimate asylum claim extends to claiming asylum in America is another topic. But without a doubt, they have been persecuted by their government, and so they are living here in Armenia and experiencing the freedom that comes with living in a Christian nation. And so they're able to go to church, they're able to read the Bible. They have a thriving group of Iranians who are going to the church there, that international church here in Yerevan. And it's fascinating to talk to them and hear their stories. It's really, really cool. And I'd love to talk more about that later on. But let's get back to this story. Here's more about who was on the helicopter traveling with President Raisi of Iran. Were Iran's foreign minister Hossein. I'm not even going to try to say that. It's Amir Abdullahian. Amir Abdullahian. The governor of Iran's East Azerbaijan province was also there. Also, the official representative of the Ayatollah Khomeini was in the helicopter as well. The one local government official used the word crash to describe the incident, but acknowledged to said to an Iranian newspaper in an interview that he had yet to reach the site himself. So again, as I've been saying, this is very likely an actual crash, a helicopter crash, not a helicopter hard landing as they're trying to portray it. Okay. Now, somebody says Amir Tsarfati is reporting he's dead. Let's go look at updates. This is all happening very quickly, so I'm getting updated just like you are. If you're on Amir's uh, uh, Telegram channel, I'll go over and look here. The rescue team, he's got a video of them looking through. You can see, I wish I could show you that actually. Uh, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, held an emergency meeting after the crash. In the event, okay, so he's not reporting, at least on his Telegram channel, that he's dead. I don't know where he might be reporting that, but usually his Telegram channel, which has over 500,000 subscribers, is one of the places where he posts first. So I'm not sure that he's actually dead. The last post Amir has about him says, in the event that the president of Iran dies, the person who's expected to replace him in office, at least temporarily, is Vice President Mohammad Mahbar. In such a case, then Iran would have to have elections within 50 days to elect a new president. Now, so yeah, hard landing in a helicopter is not good. If you've ever flown in a helicopter, question, have they found the helicopter? As of right this minute, I don't see where they have found it. There's video of the rescue team, which is a bunch of fat guys in coats that are very slowly hiking around in the mountains out there. I have pictures. I wish I could, well, I probably could show you that. Let's see here. I'm going to see if I can show you pictures that I just took in the area over the last 48 hours, because I've been out there hiking myself just recently, just down near, not too far in the province. I've been in the province that borders Iran over the last couple of days. So here's, I'm just going to do it like this. Whoop. We'll hold this up. Let's see if this works. Okay, so there is some pictures of what it looks like out there. It's very green because I've been getting a lot of rain. It's not usually that green where we were, but you can see those gigantic mountains there. And again, this is on a clear day, but if it was socked in, you can imagine how easy it would be to, sort of find yourself running into one of those mountains. Here's another picture of the landscape out there. It's beautiful landscape, absolutely gorgeous. We had a great time hiking out there with my son over the last couple of days. But yeah, I mean, you can see if that was completely socked in, which it was every day we were there, but in the mornings it was more clear. You can see there that it was, it would be very, very easy. Like, where are you going to land a helicopter out there, right? It's trees and it's rocks. And so I would say that there is a better than zero chance that the president of Iran could be dead. It's possible. I'm not going to report that he is, just that he could be, because, again, the location where he crashed, I'll show you the map once again for those of you who are just joining us. This is Armenia. Armenia's border with Iran. Iran is to the south there. That red dot is the crash site. I'll scroll back down here and show you. You can see Armenia there on the top left of the screen. You see Azerbaijan on the top right. Armenia is sort of has kind of a flag lot that goes down to the Iranian border. And you see Nakhichevan there kind of in the center. Nakhichevan belongs to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is also over here on this side. So this part in the middle, just above the crash site, is Armenia. That's the part where I was hiking over the last 48 hours. And so, again, very extreme topography, uh, and that's what we know. Now, let's talk a little bit about. Let me see if there's any questions. First of all, I'm going pretty fast here. Um, I just want to see if there's even. Yeah, no. Look, I'm telling you, I was there. The fog is it's more than heavy fog. It is like a freezing cold, the cloud that just got, because the uh, the elevation, at least where we were, was between 3 and 6,000 feet, and it's probably closer to 3,000 feet where the president's helicopter went down. But I can tell you, it's the very big mountains. It's not flat. It's straight up and down like this, and it's there's not a lot of good places to land a helicopter. Let's put it that way. Okay. Daryl Starling has a question. If the president is dead, how would Iran's goal for nuclear capability be affected if they haven't achieved the capability already? Okay, Daryl, well, that would depend on who becomes the next president. But even without that, we can say that the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, who is kind of the actual guy pulling the strings in Iran, he's been there for a long, long time. He is ultra conservative, meaning not conservative like we think of it in America, but conservative Muslim, which means basically quite extreme. It's a They are a Shiite Muslim sect, and so I don't think it would change their uh, plans all that much. I don't think it would change their goal of achieving nuclear weapons all that much. Uh, I, I'm imagining that whoever they get as their new president, whether he's a little more moderate or not, is still going to be beholden to the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And so, yeah, let's see. Very difficult for rescue operations. That's correct. There are not the roads out there are very bad, mostly dirt, a lot of washouts. One time when I was out there in October, I think, of last year, or no, April of last year, I was out that way, and there was a bus coming from Iran into Armenia and climbing up one of the mountains, and the bus caught fire. All the people jumped off, and the bus burned to the ground, like just the whole bus just completely engulfed in flame. And the driver of the bus, I think, was pretty sure that he was going to have to pay for the whole thing because he was pretty distraught. Had to jump off the bus so fast he had to even leave his shoes behind, poor guy. And those people were just stranded out there out for who knows how long. Um, okay, this guy needs to go away. And let's see if there's any more. Um, let's see if there's any more questions here. Analyst Abbas Aslani says nobody knows what exactly has happened and how the president and other local officials, because the situation is quite complicated. He just told Al Jazeera. Right. Um, so this is big news. The nobody has. I've not seen any reporting at all yet about anything to do with like the Mossad or it is Israel being involved in this. I think while there's maybe some slim chance that Israel may have had something to do with that in a sneaky way. Um, I think that's unlikely. It does. We don't need Israel to be involved for a helicopter to go down in the middle of nowhere in Iran. If we learned anything from the large attack of drones and missiles that Iran uh, committed against Israel last month, we learned that the Iranians' technology is not in very good shape. And they're not very well trained. They're not very well led. They're not very well maintained as far as their military goes. And so, if this was a military helicopter, uh, that wouldn't surprise me a bit if the thing just went down because very bad, uh, very bad maintenance and training and things like that. Uh, the reason I say that is because many of the missiles and drones that were fired out of Iran never even made it out of Iran. They fell inside Iran. We don't have any word on any casualties, but if anybody was killed in Iran from the dozens at least missiles and drones that fell to ground inside Iran, never even made it to Israel in that attack. If anyone was killed, you could easily say more Iranians died in that attack by Iran on Israel than Israelis died, because no Israelis died in that attack. Could his death end the war? One tired mama says. I kind of doubt it, because again, the button pusher in the Iranian government is the Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, the president certainly has a lot of authority, but President Raisi is, or was, whether or not he's alive, uh, very close to the Ayatollah. And those guys pretty much operated in lockstep on most things. So somebody says, I got a question here. Dan Andros sent me that said, will his death disband the proxies? I highly doubt that. Iran's goals really have not changed or are unlikely to change because of this event. Uh, Obviously, if Raisi has survived, nothing changes. If Raisi did not survive the crash, then we don't know until they get a new president what direction the new president is going to want to take the country. But even if he did want to make some changes, he's going to have to contradict the Ayatollah Khamenei. And again, that guy probably has more power than the actual president does. He's the supreme leader, right? So I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, go ahead and post them, and we'll answer them as best we can. Question by Amy Stauffer: will they probably blame Israel for propaganda purposes? Almost certainly. I'm surprised they haven't already. Um, I think it is a foredrawn conclusion that the Iranians are going to blame Israel for this and try to use it as some sort of, uh, you know, justification for further aggression on Israel. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. Okay. Do you think it was on purpose? Brenda says. I'm not sure what you mean by that. As in, did somebody sabotage the helicopter? That's certainly a possibility. We don't know. We certainly don't know yet um, uh, a lot of details about this. And what I could say is, if somebody did do that, they're not going to admit to it, most likely. And what was the destination of the aircraft? I'm guessing they were going to Tabriz, or they were coming from Tabriz, which are, we'll go back to the map here. Let me find the map. Tabriz is down here. It's the first major city. I guess they could have been going to someplace up here in the northern corner near Azerbaijan, but I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting on the destination or the origin of the flight, although I would imagine that information will be forthcoming shortly. As a matter of fact, let me update my news feed here and see if okay, it's already, let's just look here on the AP. Nothing has been updated on the AP about this yet. We'll go over here and check on a couple of Telegram sites. real quick. Meanwhile, we are still getting red alerts in Israel with rocket attacks on uh, northern Israel and drone warnings, sirens sounding in northern Israel, across northern Israel all day today. They've been going off. So Iran's proxies are still busy shooting rockets and drones at northern Israel. And I think I might have even seen some coming out of Gaza today, but I was hiking, so I wasn't paying a lot of attention to it. Let's look here. I'm trying to find this. Let's see where it went. Israel News. Uh, okay, spokesman for the Iranian government says we do not have any information yet because of the weather conditions. We're asking all people to pray for the safety of the Iranian president. That's coming from the Iranian government spokesman on Twitter. He says, we are experiencing difficult and complicated conditions. It's the right of the people and of the media to be aware of the latest news about the president's helicopter accident, but according to the coordinates of the accident site and the weather conditions, there is no news until now. In these moments, patience, prayer, and trust in relief groups are the way forward. That was his tweet, word for word. Now, his name is Ali Bahadur Jarumi, spokesman for the Iranian government. Now, one of the things that I try to do on this uh, these lives that I do for you is I try to help you read between the lines, just based on my experience, more than 20 years covering wars and disasters around the globe, traveling around the world, and my 8 years of military experience uh, to boot. So anytime we're talking about anything that has to do with the military, I try to help you sort of read the situation uh, by taking the information that we do have and reading between the lines. Now, this is an imperfect science. Uh, for example, I've talked a lot about like the difference between the sound of incoming and outgoing fire in the war zone. When I was in Ukraine, very often my fellow journalists, I would hear them saying, "We're hearing very loud explosions," and that shows that the Russians are pushing into Kiev. And I was listening and going, those explosions are outgoing, not incoming. And that means that the Ukrainians are holding off the Russians. The Russians are not coming in. So if you know, the more you know about those kinds of situations, the better you can read the environment and understand what's happening. And since I've spent the last 20 years in war zones around the planet, I try to help you read between the lines when it comes to understanding the information that we do have and extrapolating from that. But I want you to understand that these are extrapolations, that they're not facts. They're just, um, wild guesses based on my experience. Okay. So don't take it as gospel when I say any of this stuff. But again, going back to what I was saying before, that having been a helicopter pilot myself, uh, a hard landing is when you try to land someplace or you have to land someplace um, unintended. You don't mean to land, but you have to land somewhere, and you land, skids down, as we used to say, dirty side down. You don't destroy the helicopter. Okay. Uh, Interesting. Somebody says, Ingrid Perez says, X is reporting that a USAF, United States Air Force C-17, has landed in Baku, Azerbaijan for the first time in a year after the crash. Can you verify? I can't verify right now because I'm right in the middle of this live, but somebody I'm sure can get on Flight Tracker and verify that and put it in the comments here. Folks, while I've got you, let me just mention that CBN runs on your donations. If you want to keep us in the field, bringing you these reports, It's great. It would be great if you would go toss us a couple dollars over at cbn.com. It's tax deductible, and it would also be very helpful if you subscribe to the YouTube channel here, hit that notification bell, and you can find out before I go live when I'm about to do so. And that way you won't miss these lives every time I do them. You can also go over to my YouTube channel, my personal YouTube channel. It's called The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube. And you can subscribe over there and get sort of more of my opinion and more commentary rather than the report, just the straight reporting on my own channel. You can also go to chuckholton.com if you want to follow all of the reporting I do. I've been putting up a lot of pictures of my hiking trip that I've been doing here in Armenia over the last week. Some beautiful scenery and Christian history and that sort of thing. You can also find my books and my documentaries and everything there on chuckholton.com. So I would recommend that you go check that out. Anyway, I want you to I want to go back and I want to just, again, talk about my experience as a helicopter, well, I say pilot. Air Scout Observer was the correct term for the job that I held in the United States Army National Guard for 4 years while I was in college, like 100 years ago. To put it in perspective, many of the helicopters that we flew back then, they were called OH-58 Kiowa, which is essentially a Bell Jet Ranger painted green, still had patched bullet holes in the frame from Vietnam. So it was like in the early 1990s when I was flying helicopters out there. And so long time ago. Anyway, because I flew helicopters, I can offer you some maybe better understanding about what they are saying about this crash. Again, because of two separate things. Number one, I used to fly helicopters, so I know a little bit about hard landings. I was not a very good pilot, I will have to say. And so I actually probably participated in more than my share of um, things that might should have been called hard landings, but were not. I was actually in one legitimate hard landing where we had a chip light come on that showed that there was metal coming apart in the transmission of the rotor blades, which is a very, very bad thing with a helicopter because if the transmission comes apart, the rotor blades come off and you are essentially a flying cinder block and you're not going to fly very long. Thank you, EA Sunshine. That's very kind of you to donate right here on YouTube. That's good. Thank you for doing that. And all of you, the others of you who have been donating, you can donate directly here through YouTube if you like. And we're very happy to have that as well. So thank you. So the chip light came on, which means there might be real bad trouble with the transmission, which means you got to put the helicopter on the ground right this minute. And so I happened to be flying at the moment that happened. I saw the light come on and I said, that's a chip light. The pilot said, I got the controls. He grabbed the controls from me because he was a much better pilot. And he started spiraling us down toward the ground. This is flying over central Wisconsin at the time. We saw a farmer's field, like a cornfield. And so the pilot said, I'm going to aim for that cornfield right there next to the freeway. And I said, okay, sounds good. As we got closer down to the ground, though, so what the pilot's doing is he's just almost auto rotating down just to take the stress off the transmission. And then when he gets down close to the ground, he pulls power as much as he can to slow us down. And we come in and land normally, hopefully, on the ground. But as we got closer to that cornfield, I realized, got some perspective. I said, hey, this was like late summer. I said, hey, that corn is like 10 feet tall. Like it's taller than our helicopter. We like, you don't want to land right there. And he said, oh, shoot, you're right. And so there was another field kind of a little ways off that had been plowed recently. And so he said, I'm going for that field. And he very quickly changed direction, whipped us around, and came in, didn't really have time to line it up well. And so came in much faster than he had hoped and sort of bounced and skidded and bounced a couple times and then landed. But um, it was a good landing. We kept the dirty side down. We landed on the skids. The helicopter did not appear to be damaged in any way. We shut the helicopter down. We tied down the rotors, disconnected the battery, all the things you do when you get out of the helicopter. Looked around and I could see some farmers like looking around the edge of their hedgerow, looking at us like, oh my gosh, a helicopter just landed in our field. It was also fairly close to the interstate, and a lot of cars on the interstate called 911 and reported a helicopter crash because they saw us go down behind the trees, and we were obviously not, we were going very fast, so we were obviously not, coming in for a normal landing. So people were pretty sure that we had crashed. Um, so next thing we knew, there's like fire trucks and rescue services and all these people coming out and like trying to check me over. And I'm like, I'm fine, I'm fine. Like we walked away from it, it's fine. And so they had to check out the helicopter. They had to, like um, take the rotors off, take the skids off, check the motor. Like I think that helicopter was redlined for some time because even though everything looks okay, especially the U.S. military is not going to take chances with the helicopters. As a matter of fact, every part on that helicopter has a expiration date down to the smallest nut, the smallest bolt, the smallest screw, everything in the manual has an expiration date. And then what they do is they say, okay, this screw is probably going to last for 1,000 hours. I'm just making things up. Let's say it's going to last 1,000 hours. So in 800 hours, we're going to change it out whether or not it needs it, just so that it doesn't. Because it's not like your car. If you're like me, where you just drive your car and you change the oil and you kind of drive it until something breaks, and then you take it to the mechanic and have it fixed, and just hope that it doesn't leave you on the side of the road stranded somewhere. You can't really do that with a helicopter because it's not going to leave you stranded by the side of the road. It's going to leave you stranded, a couple thousand feet up in the air, and you'll die. So as they maintain helicopters, they just take those parts off, and even if there's nothing wrong with them, even if it's just a screw, they throw it away and they put a new one on according to a specific schedule. That's how it's supposed to work with helicopters. Now, knowing what we know about the Iranian military, which is very large. I mean, the Iranians have the largest military in the region. Uh, I'm just looking here. Now, the size of the Iranian military is over 500,000 people. That's active duty. And that's the largest military in the region, as I said. But what we know about them is that they're very poorly trained, very poorly led, and very poorly motivated. Those things lead us to surmise that it's certainly possible that the maintenance might not be as stringent on an Iranian helicopter, even the one belonging to the president, as it would be on an American military helicopter with, the money that we have to put into that sort of thing and all that. So I'm not saying that they just fly it until something breaks, but they might push the envelope a little bit and not, oh, that screw looks good, we'll just go ahead and reuse that screw, something like that. However, all those little decisions. Look, if there's one thing I learned flying helicopters in my training to fly them in flight school, is that accidents are very rarely accidents. Accidents actually get constructed by a series of small decisions that each one independently might be, not seem like it's not a big deal. But taken as a whole, all of those small decisions construct an accident, and that's how accidents happen. There are some very good books on the subject, and that I've read since then that have talked about that with civilian accidents, like climbing accidents and things like that, where climbers, they like climbing Everest. They get up there and, oh, well, we have to be off the summit by 2 p.m. And, oh, well, it's 2 o'clock, but we're just 100 meters from the summit. So it'll only take another few, minutes to get up there, whatever, so we're just going to just push the envelope just a little bit. And, oh, gosh, my oxygen ran out, but I think I can make it. The problem is there's a momentum that takes over in situations like that keep pushing you to keep going forward when a lot of other signals or red flags are coming up telling you it's time to abort and turn around. But because of the momentum that's been, put together, that leads to accidents happening, being constructed. Again, accidents rarely are actual accidents. So I say all that just to say that in a case like this, what you might find is that, especially in a dictatorial, totalitarian state, if the president shows up and says, "Is the helicopter ready to go? I've got some places I need to go," and it's not quite ready to go, they might say, "Oh, yes, sir, absolutely, sir, yes," and they just pray, "Oh, please, that things go right." So those kinds of things could lead to an accident being constructed, even with the helicopter that belongs to the president of Iran. So we don't know if he is dead. We all, at least at this moment, we don't know. But what we do know is that the helicopter went down in a heavily forested area with very extreme topography in extremely foggy weather. Again, I was just down there in the last 48 hours, and I can tell you that is the thickest fog I think I've ever seen. Like, I was trying to drive in it at one point when we were coming back, and you had to have your flashers on and drive about 5 miles an hour, because if somebody was stopped up ahead of you and didn't have their lights on, you could crash into them if you're going 15 miles an hour. It was really, really bad. Okay, so if he flew into fog like that, as we used to say in the Army, those clouds have rocks in them, and so it's yeah. Amir Kana Michelle says Amir just reported now that 3 of the rescuers have disappeared. Again, if this is the topography is as bad as I'm sure uh, it is possible, certainly, that the uh, rescuers themselves are at great risk, because it's. I'm just looking here. Because the topography is just so bad. So hang on a minute. Now, again, it's dark here now. It's 9:19, and so it's after dark. Super bad weather. It's been rainy down there, like unseasonably rainy over the last week or so. I've again just come from there, and it's very bad weather. There are even some photos that the Iranians have published of the weather conditions in the area, and it's bad. I mean, it's bad. So I want to say here now, I wanted to also mention on board the helicopter with the president, the Iranian President Raisi, were the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His name is Amir Abd al-Layyan, and the representative of the supreme leader in the East Azerbaijan province. That's the province they were flying in, and the governor of East Azerbaijan province. So, in one fell swoop, if these guys crashed, they just wiped out a handful of very important people in the Iranian government. Again, what effect this will have on Iran's relationship with Israel is really hard to say. I would venture to say that it's not going to affect, it's not going to stop the war. It's not going to make Iran stop supporting their proxies. It's, if anything, the Iranians are going to blame it on the Mossad, and Hezbollah is going to step up its attacks on Israel. I would say that is highly likely that we see tomorrow, let's say, a large number of attacks on from coming from Lebanon, coming from the Houthis in Yemen, or whatever. All of the proxies of Iran trying to blame this on Israel. We don't know if Israel was involved. It's they, again, as I said before, they don't need to be involved. Uh, okay, but now Strife 45 says the guy's alive. Helo hard landed, no deaths. Again, but the government is calling it a hard landing, but other officials in the government have used the word crash. And as I've said, we can read between the lines. You would expect that they're not going to call it the government itself is not going to call it a crash until they know for sure whether or not the president is dead. But if they went down in the area that they say they did, according to this map here, that is an extremely rugged area with very high mountains, up to 11,000 feet, very bad weather recently, and very forested area. Not the kind of area where you could make a decent landing very easily. Again, it was very bad weather. They couldn't see the ground. It's more than likely that this is an actual crash and not a hard landing. Okay. So let's see here. Yeah, we don't know if it's a rescue or a recovery at this point. We probably won't know anything until it gets light here tomorrow morning. Any other questions, go ahead and post them, and I will try to answer them now. We really appreciate all of you that are online and subscribing to the channel. If you have subscribed to CBN News YouTube channel, I would suggest that you go check and see if you're still subscribed, because one thing we found is that often people get unsubscribed for suspicious reasons and they have to resubscribe to the channel. I don't know why that is. Again, if you are a subscriber to my personal channel over on the Hot Zone on YouTube, there I can do a better job of answering your questions and interacting with our viewers, because I have fewer people that are online. We've got over 8,000 people online right now, so it's really hard to interact in the chat as much because it's just flying by here. But you can go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. I'll do more lives over there, and we can talk more about it. I can answer your questions better, especially if you want more opinion. Question, are there a lot of predators in their area like wolves? Yes, there are bears and wolves and snakes in that area. As a matter of fact, when I was hiking today, I'll show you a picture of the area, which is a little bit closer to Yerevan, where I was hiking today. Again, back when I just got another question from Dan Andros. Are the helicopters Russian built? They did not say what model the helicopter is, but Iran does use a lot of Russian equipment. I would say it's probably a modified Mi-17 or something along those lines. If I just had to guess, I would say it's a Russian helicopter. Those are pretty rugged helicopters. They're very good for flying in mountainous country. They're very easy to maintain. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this, the United States actually owned a fairly sizable fleet of Mi-8s and Mi-17 helicopters during the war in Afghanistan. They were being used by the DEA in Afghanistan a lot, and they were much easier and cheaper to maintain than the Black Hawk helicopters and Chinook helicopters and CH-53 helicopters that we had those are American helicopters that we had in in Afghanistan during the war. So much so that when I was there as a journalist and embedded with the DEA, fast teams and stuff like that, and flying on those Mi-8 and Mi-17 helicopters from Russia, very often the DEA would get requests from the US military to borrow their Russian helicopters for certain missions because they were better at flying, or at least maybe, they wouldn't arouse as much suspicion. So a lot of times the special operations guys would want to use the DEA's helicopters over there. And So, yes, very good question, though. I would say that it's very likely that the helicopter uh, that he was flying in was of Russian build. KP asks, why fly in those conditions? Uh, they probably did not start out in, they wouldn't have flown if the conditions were that bad when they took off. But somewhere between, this is a very sparsely populated area. It's one of the reasons I like hiking in that region, is because it's just beautiful. It's unspoiled. It's incredibly gorgeous, rugged scenery. Um, but if they took off and they were going, let's say, to Tabriz from a meeting in East Azerbaijan province, and then they ran into a cloud bank, they may have decided to push on rather than go back because of their fuel level, because the president wanted to, because they just thought it was, not that bad, whatever. But I can tell you that those clouds can blow in very quickly. As a matter of fact, I was going to look here and see if I could show you some more video from the region that I shot recently. Question, could a cyber attack cause the crash of a helicopter? Probably not, especially if it was a Russian-made helicopter. This is probably a modified one. It probably does have some electronics on it, but it's not connected to the internet per se. I mean, maybe something like a Herf gun, which is a weapon that fires a directed electromagnetic pulse, which would fry anything electronic. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. It's not probable, but no, a cyber attack most likely would not affect the helicopter unless somebody caused let's say, the software on the flight computer, for example, to be um, updated with new firmware, and they managed to infiltrate a worm or some sort of virus into the new firmware that then made the helicopter go astray. Probably what's more likely, I mean, again, it's not likely, but more possible, uh, would be that they uh, jammed or somehow hacked the GPS signal in that region. That is possible because Israel does that all the time inside Israel. When the when the Iranians attacked Israel last month with the hundreds of drones and rockets, Israel like jammed the GPS signal nationwide across their country so that any missile coming in that was GPS guided would be thrown off course. And if you were in Israel during those attacks, what you saw was, if you tried to pull up the map on your phone, it would show that you were either at the airport in Beirut, Lebanon, or at the airport in Cairo, Egypt, even though you might be in Tiberias or you might be in Jerusalem or someplace. And that has been going on since the war began. So it's very possible. Uh, I wouldn't go so far as to say likely, but it is possible that the Israelis could have caused the GPS in the president's helicopter to uh, go off by a few degrees. And so instead of flying by that mountain or between those two mountains, it flew into a mountain or something like that. Again, I think it's highly likely that the Iranians will claim that Israel did something like that. If they did do it, they will never claim it. Israel would not claim something like that. They're just going to go, I mean, that's the way Israel go. That's the way they work. That's their MO. When they do something, they don't take credit for it. They just let it happen. Okay. So we don't know whether or not right now, whether or not the president of Iran is dead or alive. I think it's a 50-50 chance, just on this is my opinion, 50-50 chance whether or not he survived the crash, and I'm calling it a crash because of the location where it happened and because of the circumstances surrounding it. Uh, I we don't know if he's okay. When we find out, we will certainly let you know. I'm just looking here. One of the things that I can say is that okay, Iranian intelligence confirms that the helicopter crashed. If the Iranian intelligence is confirming that he crashed, I think that that is a precursor to the Iranian intelligence confirming that he has died. But again, we don't have that yet. The only footage that we have, there is some footage of the Iranian president flying on his helicopter, and I will try to show it to you here. It's hard for me to do this because I'm kind of a one-man band here, but we do have some footage that just recently came out. Okay, this is the last footage of the president, known footage of the president flying on his helicopter. You see, okay, wait, hold on. I just saw something there. Okay, so the helicopter that it shows right there, I don't know if you can see that. You know what that looks like? That looks like a UH-1 Huey helicopter. Now, it very well, no, it looks like a Sikorsky. No, that's not a Huey. That looks like some kind of Sikorsky helicopter. I cannot tell you what model helicopter that is. Maybe somebody else could, who knows, their helicopters better than I do, can look at that image and tell me what helicopter that is. Now, that's likely not the. Okay, somebody said he was on a Bell helicopter. Well, that could be a Huey. I mean, if he was in a Huey, Hueys do not do well at altitude. I can tell you that. They do not do well in real cold conditions either. One Tired Mama says, is hypothermia a concern up there? Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was out there a couple days ago, again, in that same region, just north, I would say maybe 60 miles north of where the crash site happened inside Armenia. The temperatures at night were getting down in the 30s, like 36 degrees one night we were there, which made for a miserable night camping. But and even during the daytime, one morning I was out actually doing a live. You can go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton and look at the last live that I did. And I was actually in that province, in Sunik province, in southern Armenia, when I did that live. And you can see the fog come in behind me. So it was a sunny morning. It was beautiful, beautiful day. I took some amazing photographs of the scenery out there and just how rugged and beautiful it was. Let's see if I can find that. And then as I was doing my live, okay, that was after that. As I was doing my live, okay, here's a view of the, okay, check this out. This is a view from the porch of the place where I did my live. Okay, those snowy peaks off in the distance, those are 11,000 foot peaks right there. And I'm at about 5,000 feet where I took this photo. But you can see it's gorgeous, green. It had rained a lot and everything. And it was like in the 50s. And then during my live, the clouds roll in. Again, you can see it. Go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. You can watch my last live and see it. But as the clouds rolled in, the temperature dropped like 15, 20 degrees, just like that. And it got really cold. And so I'm there. Actually, my feet were freezing while I was doing the live. I had my coat zipped up and I was trying to finish up because it was, yes, Gets very cold up there. So it's a good question, One Tired Mama. Thank you for that. Let's see. I saw another question come through. Nightmare question. User nightmare. Could it have been an inside job? Certainly could have been. There are plenty of people who are unhappy with the way things are going in Iran. The economy is not great, partially because of the sanctions against them. The people have been brutally repressed under this president who took power in 2021. And so it's entirely possible, sure, if they wanted to get rid of him. But again, we don't need anything nefarious to have happened for this to have taken place. Helicopters crash, and helicopters flying in an area like that, if they go down, it's very likely that the president could be dead. Again, this is not the Ayatollah Khamenei. So you have to understand that in Iran, you have the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, and then you have the president, and then everybody below him. So, yeah, well, yes, helicopters can glide down as long as they still have rotors that turn. If the rotors freeze up, okay, but that's not what they're saying here. They're not saying that this thing fell out of the sky. They're saying that they crashed. They could have been just flying full speed ahead right into a mountain because it was so foggy. They don't know. So we don't need anything nefarious to have been going on for this crash to have happened. And if the president is dead, somebody's asking what happens next. What happens next is that the vice president takes over, and then they have to have new elections within 50 days. So that's what we know. So I'm going to go back and refresh our news feed here and see if we have anything new to say here. Okay. Iraq is offering Iran help with search and rescue efforts. Let's see. That so far they're still saying, at least the news is still reporting a hard landing. Again, I think that's a euphemism for a crash at this point. What happens if the Iranian president dies in office? According to Article 131 of the Islamic Republic's Constitution, if a president dies in office, the first vice president takes over with the confirmation of the supreme leader, who has the final say in all matters of state. There you have it. The president is not the top guy. The top guy is the Ayatollah Khamenei. Okay. So Raisi was elected president in 2021, and elections are due to take place in 2025. But if he's died in this helicopter crash, then obviously they're going to have new elections sooner than that. Okay. Any last questions before we go? So black box data, good question. We're not even close to that yet. I mean, you know, this has just happened. So there's still a whole lot we don't know. And so it would just be speculation to even say. So let's see. Did these fellows help plan the October 7th massacre? That's a very good question, YW, Yahweh Ambassador. I would say without a doubt. The Iranian leadership, the Iranian military, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Iran's military, certainly had something to do with planning the October 7th attacks. We know that because they have recovered the operational orders and fragmentary orders for the attack. They were very highly produced. They were very highly planned. And so this is something that probably Hamas would not have been, those kinds of plans with that kind of detail and that kind of professionalism is something that Hamas couldn't have done on their own. It would have required a state actor like Iran to help them with that. Now, whether or not Hamas took those plans and, you know, jumped the gun is another question. That very well could be, but there's a lot of speculation about that. We don't know. We don't know. Without a doubt, though, it's okay. Somebody's saying, what are the odds of surviving a helicopter crash? If it's an actual crash, the odds are very low. Now, I've been in one crash and one hard landing. I say crash. Um, I would say the helicopter that I was in that crashed actually ran into a wall. The rotors hit a wall, and then it set down very hard. And from what I'm told, the helicopter had to be scrapped. Nobody in the helicopter was seriously injured, but we all got shook up pretty bad. That was when I was a private in the Army. That was a Chinook helicopter, and it was at Fort Benning. Um, I was in another helicopter in Afghanistan one time that broke down on landing as it was landing on a mission out in Farah province in the eastern part of Afghanistan near the Iranian border. And so we went ahead with the mission, conducted the mission. While we were conducting the mission, the U.S. military flew out some specialists who fixed the helicopter on the ground. And then we got back in the helicopter after several hours and flew it back to base, and it was okay. So helicopters break down. They're very complex machines, some of the most complex machines on Earth. As we were fond of saying when I was flying helicopters, helicopters don't really fly so much as they beat the air into submission. And they're not actually machines so much as they are like a conglomeration of thousands of parts all moving in the same direction at the same time. So more effective than coffee, I would imagine. Yeah, the weather is very bad down there. Again, I was just down there. Harain says he is alive. Breaking news. I don't see that breaking news yet, and I'm looking at the uh, I'm looking at the breaking news channels here, and I don't see anything uh, showing. Let's see. We'll check Amir's page again. A significant deployment of Iranian security and military personnel has been observed across Tehran, with members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps reportedly taking positions near several government buildings. That's not a good sign. And that's not a sign that he's alive either. That's a sign that he's not alive. Now, how are okay, this guy, Hurain, when you post the same thing like 10 times, you're getting the boot. Sorry. Um, the Iranians, for their part, on Iranian Telegram channels, are posting memes of people dancing and celebrating. So if he is dead, I don't think a lot of people are going to mourn him in Iran. You like that? You want me? I could, yeah. I unfortunately am genetically incapable of rhythm, so you're not going to see me dancing actually anywhere. Um, Somebody just heard Joe Hutchinson said, I just heard the weather was too bad to continue the search. Well, it is 9:45 at night here. And so, yeah, it's not likely they're going to continue the crash. Continue the search throughout the night because it'd be too dangerous for them to do so. Could it be fake news? Could he go into hiding? I don't know why that would be. Yeah, the Trump dance. I'm stealing Trump's moves. Yeah, let's not go there. That's bad. Let's see. Uh, okay. I'm not in John Potts Heilung. I'm not in that region right now. I was in this unique province of Armenia uh, about, well, 18 hours ago, or I'm sorry, 24 hours ago, something like that. I was out there hiking in that region with my son for the last week. And so, this unique province of Armenia is the province that touches the Iranian border. And so I was maybe about 60 miles or so from where the crash happened, just north inside Armenia. And so I can tell you that region is very extreme topography, very remote, and very bad weather lately that they've been having down there. So it's not surprising that there was bad weather in northern Iran. Now I'm going to go back and look here and see if I can find the photos that I took in that area just to show you. I got to get back to October. So the last time I was right on the border was October last year, right before the October 7th attacks. And I was there on October 7th and was called out of the Iranian border to go to Israel when the October 7th attack happened. But this is one of the last pictures I took in the Sunik province. This is very close to the Iranian border. And so you can see the photograph there of the mountains, very high mountains. These mountains are about 10,000 feet. But there are mountains in the area that are over 11,000 feet. And so you can see why it would be bad. Now I have some video even of, I'm trying to find it, of the fog rolling in on those mountains, just to show you how fast it came in. I mean, it just comes, right over just covering everything up. I'm trying to find it here. Some of the video I took. There's another photograph I took from the region. This is just, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen miles from where the crash took place. Now I'm trying to see if the video, if I can see on the video here. Nope, not that one. Because it's very common for that kind of fog to roll in, especially at those higher altitudes. When you're at a higher elevation, here's a great picture I took of the mountains with the fog. And so you can see there that it's pretty hard to see. Pretty soupy up there. Here's me doing a live stand-up up there in the mountains. You can see the fog. This is actually not very heavy fog right there behind me. You can see something, but normally when that fog rolls in, you can't see anything. I mean, it's crazy. Let's see here if that is, oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. Here's the fog rolling in. This is what I was trying to show you. Okay, nice and clear. And you can see that fog coming across right there. Just comes rolling in like a cloud. And man, once you're inside that, you are toast. If you're flying a helicopter in that, good luck to you, man. Good luck. Okay. So that gives you a sense of what it's like when that fog comes rolling in. It's just a cloud that comes over and you can't see anything, like nothing. Okay. So the president was a very hardliner. Noble Traders AU asks hardliner or moderate. The president, Raisi, is or was a real hardliner, an extremist, without a doubt. And so we'll see. Okay, somebody says breaking news: contact has been made with 2 passengers. Again, let me go check, but I am not seeing that. Let's see here. No. Israel has announced it has nothing to do with the crash. Okay, and I believe them. They don't need to have anything to do with the crash for something like that to happen. Okay, again, if you are posting things like he's alive or they have made contact with survivors, it would be really great if you would post a link to where you're getting that, because I have a feeling that there are people intentionally leaving fake news in the chat here. Um, so let's see here. Yeah, I really believe from what I'm seeing here, there's a fair to middling chance that the president of Iran has been involved in a major crash and could very well be dead. We don't know that. We don't know if he's dead, but that's what we have now. So Benji P asks, somebody else asks, do helicopters not have sonar or radar or something like that that helps pilots when it's foggy? Sometimes they do. There is, like the thermal scopes and stuff. Now, if you've ever tried to fly using one of those thermal scopes, imagine looking at an 8-inch CRT television that is like just uh, thermal. If you've ever seen a thermal image, it's kind of hard to see. It's grainy for sure. Going 150 miles an hour and in the mountains, it's not as easy as it looks. Now, more modern helicopters certainly have more instruments, but we don't know exactly what kind of helicopter this was. The helicopter that I saw at the end of that video we were looking at looks like it's more modern than an Mi-17, so it could be some kind of Eurocopter or something like that. I have not seen any information that says what kind of helicopter it was. Now, Benji P asks, in your experience, when the military is transporting important figures, are they advised not to change course if they see another chopper within their group in distress? Boy, that's a very specific question. Um, well, so if they're transporting an important figure, it's usually more than one helicopter. Even with just regular military protocols, uh, we don't we don't really ever fly just one ship. We fly two ships minimum all the time. So whether it's a medevac, a cargo run, transport, something like that, especially in a combat zone, we would always fly at least two ships in case one gets in trouble. So you always have a wingman that can help you out. If it's flying a president of a country, you would imagine that the helicopter very likely has um, it's got a whole entourage of other helicopters, right? There's probably 4, 5, 6 helicopters all flying together. They might have a couple of military helicopters in front and back. Military as in, like attack helicopters. They might have a backup helicopter for the president, but we just don't know. What we saw in that video is that there was filming being done from one helicopter to another, and the other helicopter may not have been the one that the president was in because the camera was filming the president inside a helicopter. So I'm assuming that was the same camera that was filming out the window at the other helicopter. So, it's likely that there were three or four helicopters minimum in the complete package that was flying out there. And but we have not received word of multiple helicopters going down. And so if they flew into a cloud, those helicopters are not going to be able to see each other. And that's even worse because now you don't just have to worry about the rocks in the clouds, you have to worry about the other machines that are flying around in the clouds. And it would be very easy to run into each other up there if you're all flying in formation because you have no point of reference. You can't see anything. So you can't tell if you're drifting left or right, if you're going up or down, other than what your instruments are telling you. And so it's interesting to me that they know the helicopter went down, but they didn't know exactly where it happened, like exactly where, or at least they couldn't reach. Look, if they do know exactly where the crash happened, and they're saying they can't reach the crash site, he's probably dead. because that means he crashed in very extreme topography, and they can't just land next to the if it was a hard landing, that means they went down and landed in a field somewhere. They just landed harder than they intended to. Then the other helicopter that's with them could just go over and land next to them and pick up the survivors. But if there were more than one helicopter, and from the video that we saw, it's apparent that there was, and that helicopter, they flew into a bank of fog, and when they came out the other side, the president's helicopter was gone, and they know right where he went down, but they can't get rescuers to him. They can't land that other helicopter next to him. That guy's probably dead, because that tells us all we need to know right there. If there was another helicopter with the president following in trail, and they saw where the president's helicopter went down, or at least knew where it was, and they were not able to immediately land and pick up the president, at least, it's a recovery operation. It's not a rescue. That's, very clear. Again, this is just me extrapolating from my experience flying helicopters and my experience in that area. So take it for what it's worth. I'm not reporting that the president is dead. I'm saying that, looking at the facts that we know, it's very likely that someone in a helicopter like that went down in an area like that, with weather like that, is not going to survive. So the next question then is, I've got 3 minutes. What's going to happen now, especially as it regards the war in Israel? If I had to make a prediction, I would say that Iran and its proxies will blame Israel for this crash, and will try to retaliate against Israel for something that Israel is already denying, already saying they did not do. So let's pray for Israel, and let's pray for those rescuers and everybody involved. Okay? God, we come to you today, and we don't know all the facts about what's going on, but we know that you do. We know that you know right where that the President Raisi and the helicopters that went down are. We know that you know exactly the disposition of their souls. We pray, Lord, that somehow, if there are some still alive, that they would cry out to you, and that you would make yourself known to them, that you would rescue them. You promised, Lord, that those who fear you, the angels camp around them and rescue them. This is a hardline Muslim, a bunch of Muslims, Lord, and so they likely do not know you and did not cry out to you. And so, Lord, we grieve for them in that way, if they are indeed dead. Father, we pray that you would put an extra hedge of protection around Israel at this time, that any further attacks on Israel would suffer the same fate as the last attack on Israel from Iran, and that is that it likely killed more Iranians than Israelis. We saw you supernaturally protect Israel as hundreds of drones and missiles flew from Iran literally toward your chosen land, your chosen people. And you protected them to the extent that nobody died. That just is, hard to even fathom, that many rockets and missiles and drones, and nobody died in Israel. So, Lord, we glorify you for that. We praise you for that. And we pray that you would do that yet again, that the people in Israel, Jews and Gentiles alike, would not be able to claim responsibility or claim that they were the ones that held off the attacks, but they would only be able to say, God only could do this. That you would make yourself great to the people in Israel, and that you would be glorified in what happens in this war. Father, we pray for the soldiers that are fighting even now in Gaza. We pray for those who are up on the northern border of Israel. We pray just that you would protect them, give them supernatural wisdom, and help them to know exactly what they should do at every moment And I pray that every one of them will come back home. I pray for those who are still hostages in Gaza, that they wouldn't be forgotten. They would know that they're not forgotten, and that you would rescue them, Lord. You would send people to rescue them and get them out of there and bring them home alive. We pray all these things, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, folks, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for being a part of this. Again, you can donate to CBN by just going to cbn.com, and it's a tax-deductible donation. You can find out more about my work if you go to if you can go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube, or you can go to chuckholton.com and find out more about all the work that I do. So this guy, Top Z, needs to disappear. And goodbye. So thank you very much for watching. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.